It is May 1945. The war is won. The forces are coming home. All over Britain, children are sitting down to VE Day parties to celebrate. Recently, a lost snapshot, taken in Barnard Street, Thornaby, turned up in a local pub. It was remarkable, not only for its clarity and composition, but because all of the children in it could be identified. 2 years on, and each of the survivors have been tracked down and interviewed in places as far afield as Dallas, Texas, along with the siblings of those who died.
But it was a hard job. You know, I mean, he took his finger off there, he sliced another one off, with no safety, you know, not like there is now.
The working class town of Thornaby once thrived with its renowned industries on the banks of the Tees. What was growing up in such a close-knit post-war community like?
And there was gaslight through the streets, and we came to this place and I thought it was the Black Hole of Calcutta.
Enriched by the subject's own family photographs, this is a portrait of a long-vanished communal life and a quest to discover what became of all these children, captured at a seminal moment in British history.
It's a long way from Barnard Street, put this way, a long way.
Expectations like they are now were nothing in those days. Finding a job and just carrying on living, practically.
Well, the houses, they were all the same. They had a little wee kitchen, and my mother brought 9 of us up, and a lodger sometimes 10. And you used to have the white pot sink and just a cold tap. And then we did get a geyser later on, but the bloody thing was always popping out. And
my mum's Barnard Street house would have fitted into this room, maybe. Wouldn't it? The parlour wasn't very big. The kitchen was quite tiny. The back kitchen. When I think about it, it's ludicrous, you know. And seven kids.
Our children were born before the creation of the National Health Service and the welfare state.
And I can remember my brother died, I think it was 1942, 43. Barry. Well, he was only little and blonde curly hair, he was only 2.5. And I think he got meningitis and he was only ill for a couple of days, laid on the settee. And he died.
People didn't go to the doctors when they should have done. This country was poverty-stricken. It was just after the war, and the NHS was great. And people in Barnard Street could hardly afford doctors. I can remember, my mother had babies at home without just a midwife, and they all did. And I remember Auntie Mabel, David's mum, having her teeth out on the bed in the front bed in the parlour.
We all knew each other. Mm-hmm. We knew everybody who lived in every house, and for all there was a lot of there was Catholics, Presbyterians and Salvationists, and sometimes they would fight. I can't really remember ever fighting over religion. I really can't remember fighting over religion, because Mrs. Appleby, who lived down the road from us, she would come into our house and sing "Bless This House, Oh Lord we Pray," and the Scots who lived on the corner, they were, I think it was Presbyterians they were. But we all got along so well and everybody helped each other, and I know my mum made bread. And for a time, the Paleskis lived next door but one to us. And Mrs. Paleski would make pasta, which we loved, Sheila and me, my sister, we loved it, and my mum would make bread and they'd swap.
And his cigarettes. 40 gold flake a day he smoked. He was working, and we all saw him going up the street to work, and he was holding on to all the windowsills, and I think he must have lasted about 3 months before he passed on. I mean, he overdrank and he oversmoked and he overworked.
Local pollution only made health problems worse.
But all the pollution went into the atmosphere. And if you think of this area here, Teesside, I mean, you had Dorman along, you had the whole of Middlesbrough belching it out, all the iron foundries, canals down the bottom here, Ed Wrightson's, you had all across the river, the Malabel, and the amount of crap that was in the atmosphere was unbelievable. But you didn't notice it. That was the funny thing. You just lived with it.
Soon there would be new homes for everyone, but for now, fueled by housing shortages, newlywed couples like Dorothy and Norman had to lodge with a parent or relative.
I'm telling you, I have no idea where we slept for a start. And I know there was a big double bed because we came to live back at home when we got married from the honeymoon, and we had the large bed. So I don't know where everybody else, I don't know where mother went even.
I think my dad would have liked to move on. I remember they were building some houses in Henley Grove. And I remember my dad telling my mum they could buy a house for £5 deposit, and my mum wouldn't move. And we were in Barnard Street. She wouldn't move because she said, we have to remember where we come from, and that's it. That was important to her, not to forget where we came from, no matter where we went.
Like many of their neighbours, the Haycott family moved to one of the excellent council housing estates being built in the town.
I think we might have settled for a little terraced house when we were saving up to get married. We saved up and we said, we'll wait another year, and we got the semi-detached house in Derwent Road. But my mum thought that was lovely, you know. Oh, our Beryl's got a house in Derwent Road, you know. It was, very nice, So the family were all sort of pleased, you know, that you'd done well. And the mortgage was £10 a month, which was what Vic's wage was per week.
At the end of the road, the children's main immediate source of jobs and apprenticeships, the renowned engineering works of Ed Wrightson.
I tried to get into Dyson's with a few friends from school when we went down. You know, a job was a job, you needed a job then. And I went down and my father found out. And he said, no, you're not coming in here. Well, Ed Wrightson killed him in a way, on the fumes and muck and dust. When he did pass away, they said, his lungs were just full of dust. So that was just a lifetime in a foundry, you know. Which in a way I'm glad he got me out of it, because he was 63 when he died, so wasn't old.
Instead, David became a joiner, and after a 7-year apprenticeship, his love of travel led to a mainly freelance life, much of it abroad. Ray's father, Harry Fulton, also died young, at 64, a day before he was due to collect his state pension. But Ray himself was a casualty of a changing industrial landscape. Ray wanted to be a riveter, and soon he found an apprenticeship, but it would take 7 whole years before he could finish.
But what they were doing, they were putting welders on riveting, and they shouldn't have let them do it, and Ray but they finished the riveters and they'd served the time from being 15 to being 21. Spent 7 years at being a riveter, and then when he come, they were putting the welders on the riveters. They said they were doing away with riveters.
It's remarkable to discover that Barnard Street wasn't connected to the national grid until 1954. Electrification was a turning point in everyone's lives.
And they put the electric in and all the street, then the thing he'd got it in, it was like a revelation. Because I always remember the first wage packet he did get, he bought a radiogram. And they got the electric on in the street and he bought this big radiogram and everything, Ray.
I found my thrill.
At last, a brighter world was emerging. Rock and roll, for example, had a huge impact, and for the first time, young people met at venues like the Italian coffee and ice cream bar, Legacies.
People used to make it the centre of the community. It was a good jukebox. And the jukebox used to draw a lot of them, the rock and roll in them days and what have you, and I remember it so well. And everybody used to make a beeline for it, and I used to go and buy it was my job every fortnight to go and buy the current record number ones, and used to pick all the best records out which would suit all the lads and lasses, and they could have a box, and it was a mecca. And there was always good-looking birds there and good-looking fellas, I suppose, in that respect. And the amount of money they spent was a joke, but it was happy times because the jukebox was always playing.
And everyone used to go in there and meet up, and that's where I met Henry, in the coffee shop. But all the lads that were in the forces would come home and, sit and have a coffee, and of course you'd have your cigarettes. And
all the well-known families were all married out of the shop. They all done the courting. Most of Thornaby was courting in them days. They used to go into the shop, have a cup of tea, a cup of coffee, or a cup of Bovril with a cracker, and listen to the jukebox, and then they would start courting, and Bob's your uncle.
It was like a revelation. It was like a revolution, really, in music. You know what I mean? And as you must remember, when you went to the Mason or the Pally, it was like Jack Marwood, and then the rock and roll come on, you see. And at the time, it was all Bill Haley, wasn't it? It was Bill Haley, Little Richard, Fats Domino, the Platters. So, and we were cash rich now. We had money.
Each member of the Plesky family worked hard to make their ice cream business a post-war success, and Tony, one of the youngest, was expected to contribute.
With me being the youngest, I had it easier. My brother, for instance, he's the one who had it quite hard, and Albert, they're both very close cousins, and they used to be up the crack of dawn and breaking ice off things to get things going and what have you. Those were the hard days.
Cold, wet, damp, smashing ice up before there was refrigeration. They used to deliver blocks of ice like you see on the old-fashioned pitches. It was our job to pull it in every morning because they were left outside of the back door. So Tony and I, before we went to school, used to have to bring them in. And that was hard work and cold work. And if you didn't do it right, you got a clip across the lug off your father. And what you mourning for? Get yourself to bed and get up in the morning. And you're up in the morning at 6 o'clock before the kids were even thought of getting up.
Like millions of other young people in the 1950s, Tony did national service and served in the Royal Air Force in Germany, which we're told he really enjoyed. When Tony got demobbed in 1958, he trained as an electrician for the local council. But loyalty still led Tony to work for the family business. When he'd finished his day job, he'd often be out selling ice cream for his dad.
My brother was the backbone for my dad, but he couldn't have gone and done half the things he did if it hadn't been for my brother, been looking after the business, And my brother was always scared of my father for some reason. I just don't know what it was. Even my sister can't tell. If my dad went like that, he was there. You know, we went on holiday, he was there looking after the business. He was always the one that was left behind, you know. And that's how good he was. He was a nice man.
Jack Haycock is one of a gang of friends at the far end of the table, and they would remain pals for the rest of their lives. 2 years later, in 1947, and Jack has joined his father at Airex Fans as an apprentice sheet metal worker for 7 years. These are skills that would form the backbone of his working life, gathered from some of the region's finest tradesmen. Jack would return to sheet metal working later on, but for the moment, adventure and travel beckoned, and by 1950, Jack has joined the Navy and he's in Malta. A snapshot taken on the London embankment. Jack has been met by his sister Mary, who recently caught the bus down to London to seek her own adventure. Unlike Jack, who returned to work at his trade, Mary never went back to Thornaby to live.
Well, not for them, with a family and responsibilities. It's different for people like me who could just flit. And did.
For some, the often inhibiting ties of community and family were looser.
How about that then? I like New York in June. How about you?
But many people found the streets of Thornaby grey and left for brighter horizons. Ronald Scott became the entertainer Sam Scott. His talents led him to dance, sing and tell jokes across the world. Sam even took a piece of Thornaby to Bangkok, where he recreated a typical Thornaby pub, performing comedy routines based on his northern experiences.
And he could play the piano, he taught himself, and he played the violin. Oh, he always wanted to play the piano, always. Oh, and he used to tap dance on the corner in the lino, and one corner of the room was no top on the lino because he tap danced it away, you know. He left school at 15. My dad said he had to serve his time, he had to have a trade, and he worked in Headwritings as a fitter and turner, and he lasted a couple of weeks, and he said, I'm not doing this anymore. And he went off to London.
Dream when you're feeling blue. Dream.
He understood northern humour better than anyone I ever worked with. That was Ronnie's forte. That was him in full flight. He had this ability to discover new territory for himself, and he would go to the moon if it meant a job. He'd do it.
I like it, how about you?
Bill and Dorothy's mother, Helen, ran the corner shop. She was celebrated for rescuing some of her poorer customers with credit until payday.
Very strong. She'd battle for anybody. If anybody came and said they'd been done wrong by, she'd be in like a lion.
Helen's hard work over the years turned this tiny space into a gold mine.
The first car my mother ever bought was a Jowett Javelin, and they were a really beautiful car for our Bill when he was old enough, 17, to drive it. Then she sat up half the night because he didn't arrive home till 3:30 in the morning with all his girlfriends and everything else. Complain. I said, well, you bought him the car, Mother. I said, what did he expect? Because he was just showing up with it, naturally.
There weren't very many about, and I mean, he just loved it. And I loved driving with him as well.
The family shopkeeping tradition saw Bill take over his aunt's shop in Greetham Village.
Well, from coming from a street house to a village like this, which you had farms all around and greenery, it was just completely different, you know, and quieter, but I loved it.
Modest takings at the shop led to Bill gathering new skills of his own. So he trained as a heating engineer, and for 30 years he ran a successful business, keeping homes in the area warm.
We went on a lot of holidays. He used to like his holidays. Once a year, for a couple of weeks a year, we went on cruises. He used to love heat. We could never go anywhere where there was snow or anything like that. He loved heat. And it was always towards the end of the year, because he used to like to get heat on his body to last him over the winter months. And that is a photograph of us in Cyprus. And we loved Cyprus. And we went there, 6 or 7 times. I don't think he ever had a bad word about anybody. He was the loveliest person, he really was. He wouldn't argue with anybody. I don't think Bill and I ever had an argument, because he just wouldn't argue, you know, and that was it. But he was a lovely man.
Eileen and her partner Graham moved to the USA in the 1970s for work and never returned to England.
If someone had walked up to you at the table and said one day you would be living in Dallas, Texas, how do you think you would have responded?
Oh, well, I would have said dream on, because that's never going to happen. I'm a Thornaby girl, and I'd like to stay in Thornaby. I really would. I didn't. When I lived in Billingham, I wasn't happy. I wanted to go to Thornaby. It's got a hold on us, hasn't it? All of us. I'm running out of water. I mean, really, I've had a good life here. And especially in Texas, because I don't like winters. I really don't. Here, if I had to do it, neighbours don't mix at all. You don't ever go out on the front and talk to each other. There's no togetherness now in your neighbours, you know, none, because you just don't do it. I miss the friends. I miss the community feeling. That's what I miss about Thornaby. I don't think that we'll ever get it here. I don't. I miss England very much, even now. But if I have to live anywhere, I want to live right where I am, in Rowlett, near Dallas, Texas, because we've had a really good life here. You know, it's just that I want to live here. I want to live here in Dallas, Texas, because I love it here. So go to Albertsons and I just had it in my head what I wanted, and it's gone.
Eileen and childhood friend Beryl are separated by 4,000 miles and over 50 years. I try to roll back the years and unite them after all this time, at least in cyberspace. How would it go?
I saw you there, Beryl. I thought, oh my God, that's Mrs. Scott.
Oh gosh.
But just like your mother.
Do I?
You know, my daughter's funny, because she said to me one day, a couple of years ago, she said, well, I went past the mirror this morning, she said, and I looked in it and I said, mirror, mirror on the wall, I am my mother after all.
Oh, well, I must be as well.
Picture.
Yes.
So how's the years been? Have done good to you, Beryl?
Oh, not so bad. Vic died 36. He died 37
I remember he died
years.
young.
Yes, yeah.
What was wrong with him?
Cancer. Yeah.
That's my Auntie Annie. That's me. That's our Jackie. That's our Mary. That's my mum.
And this is my mum.
I am the spot model of my granny.
Well,
And she died when she was 66, and look at, she's an old lady there. Beryl, this is Graham, my husband. I don't know, you might know him.
Hi, Beryl.
hello.
He's from the posh end of Thornaby.
I see.
When Graham, Eileen's husband, came into the frame, they had no idea he and Beryl would share links from their childhood.
I was.
He was in Nick.
I was as well.
No idea it was Eileen's husband. Eileen's husband is Graham Henderson, the fair-haired boy there. Yes, he was in my class. And that's me there. I can remember him in the class because he was very, very quiet. Really, really quiet boy. A little bit posh, really. Yes. But very nice.
But no one could have predicted what was to come.
Where do you live, Beryl?
It's on Basildon Court, off Basildon Lane.
We lived in Brighton Close.
That's where I live.
We lived in a bungalow there, yeah.
What number?
Was it 7? Was it 7?
I don't believe this. I live in number 7.
She lives in our house. Get out! we were the first people in that house that built that. We bought it off the builder.
Edith.
What a small world.
It is, yes. Yeah. Eileen's probably sat in this room where she will have done, won't she? Yeah. I would never have thought all this would have happened, all this would have come out today. No. And I bet Eileen feels the same as well. Well, Vic died in 1976. And Caroline was 12, Craig was 14. So I had to have more income, really. And I applied for a job at the doctor's surgery. And I got it. And I was there for 20 years till I retired. And it was lovely. No complaints, really. I had a nice family. Enid, Ron and Doreen, yeah. Well, I would have hoped to have been married to Vic for longer, but my 2 children were always good, and they've been good to me since, they've been married, and they've both done well.
So he just worked all the time. He was out of work for about 4 months. But he always worked, always. And from then on, I don't think he was out of work anymore. Till he retired at 61, didn't he? With his glaucoma and his emphysema. But he went till he was 70. He was at Kennedy's 32 year because he got the clock, didn't he? Got the clock from Kennedy.
When he retired, he was gifted the clock as his retirement present, and he gifted that to me. We had this little bit of a special bond, really, and I think that picture very much signifies that, and it signifies Ray, hard worker, and physical as well. Physical work, you could say, always took its toll. He'd start work early, finish at the end of the day, black, physically worn out.
But he got more out of life the last 10 years than he'd ever.
She knew that if she was close by him, then she could look out for him, and I think it was very much that, more than anything, that it just worked. So he moved opposite my mum, where every morning he'd go across for breakfast, and then if my mum and dad went anywhere, Ray went with them in his retirement, And if they went on holiday, Ray'd go on holiday with them.
Tells us what he wants to do. He'd always wished he'd got the caravan down Saltburn earlier. Oh, he loved the caravan. And it was only I got one to get away from them all. So I bought this caravan, then he'd come down and said, that caravan's for sale next door. And she only wanted buttons for it, you know. He said, I think I'll buy it. So then he moved next door in the bloody caravan, so you couldn't get away.
When my nana passed away, then, you know, my mum took over the mantle of mothering him, really. And like I say, that's what she done. She moved him opposite her by default and nursed him until the day he died. In fact, he died in my mum's house, being nursed by my mum.
We're on the borderline now, on the what they call the Grenzer, the border. If you go down another 3 kilometres, you'll be back in Holland. Back in the UK, it was just a pub on a Friday night, club on a Saturday night, and then the rest of the week you were working for pennies.
Like the chippies in the popular TV series Auf Wiedersehen, Pet, David Skills took him to Germany.
That's how you live. That's how you live. Yeah. You do your own cooking, you go and buy your own stuff. And money was good. 3 times what you're getting in the UK. So it was tough life sometimes, yeah, especially in the winters, you know, when you've been out on some of the sites, you know. And, you know, you may be 15 floors up on a bottle of flats or something in a howling wind off the North Sea. Put it this way, if I hadn't worked abroad like I did, I couldn't have been where I've been. A lot of places I definitely couldn't have went if I stayed in the UK working me nuts off. I lived in Holland for 25, nearly 30 years working. Then I retired, got a nice big house, a nice big garden, a detached house in a village. The neighbours are half Dutch, half German, because it's so near the border. And the Dutch people and the German people are fantastic. No, there's no animosity, nothing. We spoke to my neighbours. They didn't like the war. They grew up, well, a lot of them, they grew up during the war and they hated it.
Ich kann aus Erfahrung sagen, wir beide haben viele reisen dürfen und haben sehr viel Gastfreundschaft von Menschen erfahren, die wir nie gesehen haben und die uns geholfen haben und fantastische Zeiten miteinander erlebt haben. Und das ist das, was wir unseren Kindern wünschen, dass es so bleiben wird.
Wir dürfen keine Vorurteile haben. Nein. Wir erleben es, wie auch andere Länder so nett und freundlich und gut sind. Und das wurde uns früher nicht so gesagt.
Nein,
und das haben wir erfahren und das möchten wir wohl gerne weitergeben. Das ist schön.
Ja, das ist so.
Okay, das war sehr schön gesagt.
Ja, ich hoffe es jedenfalls. Ne? Das ist auch ein Herzensanliegen. Es ist, das ist echt so. Ja. Aber nur an diesen... Einfach mal probieren.
Ja, David hast das gestern.
Yeah, I've made my own, yeah. I suppose a lot of people have done the same. They moved and never went back. Completely different lifestyle, you know. Different culture. I could live anywhere. I could live anywhere. It's what you make it, isn't it? Nice place, nice little village, no problems. Nice quiet life. It's a long way from Barnard Street. Put this way, a long way. But no regrets coming here whatsoever.
I'm amazed. That's fantastic. Fantastic. That's my brother. Ray was the oldest of the family, and that is my mother.
It's just bringing so many memories back. It's they call them the good old days, and they were the good old days, and they're certainly better than today. But as much as I loved it, I wouldn't like to go back to the good old days, because there was a lot of poverty, and some people in my grand shop, they couldn't afford to pay for food. You'd get it on tick until you could pay for it. We were just normal lads growing up, and went to school and did our best, and then left school and got a job that was suitable at the time. We've since then raised families and made the best life we could. So I died at the age of 54, I think, and he died of cancer. He was married at an early age, something around about 21. Raised a family of 3 sons. He just had a normal life. Worked all his life. Never depended on anyone for anything. Was fortunate to have a job all his life, and worked right up until the day he died. The day he took ill. I wouldn't turn the clock back and say if anything I could change I would have done different, because I wouldn't. My brother Ray, from what I understand, was quite content with his lot, so to speak, as I am, and that's the way that it was. But it's fascinating seeing this. Absolutely fascinating.
When you go back 60 years, a lot of people, when he finished the RAF, we all used to fight for the RAF coat, who would have it on the bed. It was that warm, but there was no, I mean, you get it, you don't have these things. So when you get married and you get a few bob, I've got more towels and bedding and curtains than you've ever had. You know, I just buy them because it's just something in me. He says, don't buy any more bloody towels. You know, I'll come in with bales of towels and bedding, and I'll never use the bedding. I'll have to put it all in my coffin and relax in it, you know. And if they've got a couple of quilts up there, I'll put it on.
Well, we had the shop later on when I left the Air Force. We started our own little business. We had a little shop on Norton Road. We were like a working team, and we just got on with it, really. We made a living, and it all went well. But we had, I think we were there about 28 years, so we had about 28 years of, relatively speaking, a living. We got a living for 28 years. Not a fantastic living, but we got a living, and we had no reason to complain. But that was the lady that I loved for 54 years. When she passed away, she took a copy up with her to her grave, and hopefully this one will go with me when I go, or something similar. A copy of this will go with me when I go.
And will refashion our frail body in the pattern of his glorious risen body. We commend Gladys to the Lord. May he embrace her with his peace and bring her body to life again on the last day.
When I was in the prime of my life, I thought I'd had a beautiful life, a really good life. I still think that. Lovely lifestyle. He's always earned a decent wage, and we've always had a car. He retired at 60. Luckily, we were in a pension, and if he wasn't here, I'd get it. So I would think it's been a marvellous life. Everything's been an experience. As I say, I was only 8 when we came back to Thornaby, And all I can remember was my mother having no money at all.
In 1945, Kathleen and the rest of the children could only gaze at the signs of wealth behind the facades and the fences of Craythorne Hall. Now the people of Thornaby can hire it and even sleep here if they want to.
There's been, from Barnard Street years to now, is definitely, I don't think you will ever see the jump again. That's been, you know, since these days to now. But I don't necessarily think it's a good thing either. I think we've grown far too materialistic, including myself. Yeah. And somehow in that we've lost some kind of spirit, some kind of caring really. So I don't know if it's a good thing. All of us have done okay, and my children have done okay, but there's a lot that haven't.
Kathleen's cousin, David, was born in this house over 70 years ago. Now he's across from Germany to try to find the site of the home his family had lived in since before the First World War.
Oh, when I did go back, it was a bit strange, you know, I think, well, Christ, I was born here, now some motorway. Yeah, but they ruined Thornaby, didn't they, when they did it? Thornaby didn't exist anymore. When you think about it, it's gone. It runs through our house. It's funny looking at this. When you think, oh, that's gone. Oh, that's gone. But I remember my mother, she must have come back down and she took some bricks from the house and she kept them on the back garden in Skelton Road. Just as a memory. Just a couple of building bricks. Because I asked her where she got them. She said, oh, I got them from that old house, 18 Barnard Street. She went down there and carried them home.